Hi everybody, this is Arkady Frekhtman and I'm here with
Richard Mogg, trial counsel for the firm.
And today we're going to talk about jury selection in our recent $2.2 million settlement up in the Bronx, the boogie down Bronx. How did we do it? Well, find out. This was our jury selection. So we were gonna start on Monday and we're gonna pick a jury. And the way it works is we get panelists, right? People that get those notices and they're being sent for jury duty and they have to show up in the Bronx. And then they give us about 20 or 30 people in a room, the courtroom. And then the judge usually does not preside over voir dire or jury selection in New York City in the Bronx, but we'll be there, us, the defense lawyer, and then we'll get to question the jurors and speak with them and get their opinions. And the ultimate goal is to find jurors that can be fair to both sides, that can give both sides a fair shake. The plaintiff, which is us representing the injured person, as well as the defendant, which in this case was a utility, a corporation. It was Con Ed. So that's jury selection.
Jury selection, there's a fancy word, it's called voir dire. It actually means to listen and to speak to each other. So you can look in their eyes and actually learn about the jury. In this case, as Arkady brought up, this is an accident that we've been talking about in other videos concerning a gentleman who's driving. There's a loose manhole cover and it pops his vehicle in the air. And as it goes up and down, he smashes part of his spine, causes him to have horrible permanent injuries and surgery. So during jury selection, there's a whole formula you're looking for. You're looking for people who will not so much sympathize, but will empathize with your client, will understand what happened. But better yet, what I always look for as a trial person is I want the jury to really know and understand and possibly even be familiar with the accident area, even though the judge will always instruct them, don't go to the scene. One of my plans during my part of the jury selection, because both Arkady and I were going to pick a jury, is since I was born and bred in the Bronx, I was going to get up and start talking to this room full of jurors, and I was going to start off mentioning different areas of the Bronx. Raise your hand if you're from this area. Raise your hand if you're from Riverdale, this area, that area, and then raise your hand if you're from North Broadway in the Bronx near the horse stables, because that's where my client's accident happened. That's a kind of a way of humanizing them with you and getting them involved in the jury process, and they're looking at you, oh, he's one of us. So that was my perspective in the beginning for jury selection.
And then I was gonna get into it and just be like, I like to always start, and I like this phrase, brutal honesty. And I say, what does brutal honesty mean to you? And then the jurors may say their different understanding of that phrase. And then I say that, look, there's really no right or wrong answer. You are, some people, and they're good people. They come in here with who they are and who they want to become. And this might not be the best case for them. And that's fine. So there's no right or wrong answer. Ultimately, what we're asking you is how you feel about certain things, right? How you lean. Do I lean more towards, let's say, an injured plaintiff? Or maybe I lean more towards a company. I like companies. I like Con Ed. I like my electricity. I don't want my electric bills to go up, so I wouldn't vote against Con Ed. And that's fine. So tell me, let me have it basically. Tell me the real raw truth. So that's kind of what I say. And I say, look, what we're looking for is someone who you could be fair and neutral to both sides, the plaintiff and the defendant. And if you can't, that's fine. Just raise your hand. So it's almost like I'm telling you, if you choose to serve on this jury, because there are other cases, right? There are criminal cases, there are family law cases, there's real estate, whatever. There's a lot of different cases in the courthouse. Maybe this case isn't the right case for you for whatever reason. So if you choose to serve on this case, kind of raise your hand. So I like to start with that. And then in this case, what I was gonna do was I was gonna tell them a little bit about the case, and I was gonna say, this is a case against Con Ed, and it involves a Con Ed manhole cover, and it's plaintiff's position or contention that this manhole cover was not safe. And then I was gonna get into this idea of how does the utility company rely on you? What I was looking for in terms of answers were things like, well, they rely on me to pay my bill, they rely on me to, with respect to like manhole covers, they rely on me to drive safely. And if I see something, right, like they have that thing, see something, say something. So if I see something like, let's say, a loose manhole cover or any kind of unsafe condition, they would want me to call 311 and report it. And then I was going to say, well, then also, how do you, as the customer, how do you rely on Con Ed or on a utility company? And what I was going for there was, well, electricity. They make the roads safe and the manhole covers safe. They maintain the covers, meaning they inspect them and they detect any issues. And if there are any issues that are unsafe, they correct them. And then they respond to complaints. Like if someone calls 311 and someone goes out there and says, hey, this is unsafe, like a city agency, then they would go out and take care of it. And that they have enough people to take care of things. You know, you don't want them to be short-staffed because this is important. And that they have the right people that are experienced and competent and able to fix the problems in the streets. So yeah, I was just gonna do some general stuff. Like I was gonna say, like when you do your job, right? Because the jurors are all gonna have different jobs. Some of them might be in, you know, various industries. So when you do your job, do people trust you are going to follow the safety rules? Do people rely on you? And then what could happen if you don't follow the rules? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it that everyone follows the safety rules? So that's basically about the liability, right, or the fault. In terms of other things, I was just gonna say, look, because this is something the defendant is gonna do anyway, right? So I like to do it out in the open, and I think it gives you a little bit more credibility as a plaintiff's attorney. I was gonna say, look, if the evidence in trial convinces you that Con Ed did nothing wrong, do they have any reason to worry about you as a juror? And they would probably say no. Yeah, most people would say no. And if you're going to judge Con Ed only on the evidence of what they actually did or failed to do, you know, we want to make sure that the verdict is like a clinical verdict, right? You want it to be based not on sympathy for the plaintiff, but based on the clinical evidence. So like the right verdict for the right reasons. So basically judge Con Ed only on what they did or failed to do. Like, were they negligent? And then I was going to say that, you know, the other side, they have fine lawyers and they deserve a fair trial as well. And so in the same way that you can't have sympathy for the plaintiff, basically say, oh, he had a back surgery? Oh, I pity him. My mother had a back surgery. That must be so terrible. I don't care what Con Ed did. I'm just going to give him $10 million because he had a back surgery. I know how debilitating that is. That wouldn't be a fair juror. So the same way you can't have sympathy for the plaintiff, you can't have sympathy for a defendant. But what is sympathy for a defendant? Well, sympathy for a defendant is like asking questions like, who will pay? Where does the money come from? How will they pay this verdict? When will they pay this verdict? If this verdict will be paid, right? They're all possibilities. Because you could get a verdict of, let's say, $20 million, and then the judge might say, that's not right. Let's knock it down to $1 million, or let's do a new trial. So there's so many possibilities. There could also be an appeal, right? And the appellate court is higher. They could say, go do a new trial, or I'm reversing the trial court completely. So it's not like being a juror is not like writing a check. What it is it's almost like listening to the evidence, the clinical evidence, and giving a clinical verdict. And it's more about appraising, right? Being an appraiser, like putting a value on what are all the harms and losses. So I was going to talk a little bit about appraisals, that appraisals can't be based on guesswork or speculation. They have to be based on the facts and the evidence. And appraisals aren't based on personal beliefs. Appraisals are fair, and they don't change depending on how the damage was caused. Like when you appraise a house, for example, you don't just look at it from the outside. Like I was going to say, why is it important to go inside the house? And because that's how you get a full picture, right? And the same thing with someone's body. And you're appraising a person, so you have to look at all the ways that the plaintiff could get hurt, all the damages to the human beings, and include all the details. And I was going to say here, you know, one way is to identify everything that's been taken, because basically here you have a person that was injured by someone else's negligence, and we want them to restore to the way they were before this injury happened. And one way to identify that in terms of the appraisal is to look at everything, right? Like the physical pain, but also the physical suffering from the pain, the mental pain, also the mental suffering, the medical expenses and costs, the shock and the fright, the disfigurement, the emotional consequences of the injury, and the loss of enjoyment of life. And I said one way to consider that is to look at the relationship with your wife, with your kids, with your friends, your relationship to your own body, the relationship with the things you love to do, with things that you have to do, like your job, and every aspect of your life. And I was gonna say, like, what if you add up, what if you're appraising a house and you add up all these things and the total is just high? You know, could you just say, well, I'm appraising this house and, you know, I appraised it has a nice dishwasher, it has a nice you know, sub-zero fridge and a nice whatever Wolf oven and this, and it has this nice home theater, really beautiful state-of-the-art like solar sunroom, whatever. It just adds up to a lot. It appraises to like 15 million. Could I just say, you know what? That doesn't sound right. That's a lot, 15 million. Could I just chop off a chunk and say the appraisal should only be like 7 million? Am I allowed to do that? You know, and see what the jurors say. And probably they would say, well, no, if it really adds up to 15 million, that's what it adds up to. So yeah, I mean, that's basically some of the stuff we were gonna do in jury selection. One of the other things was price versus value. Like price or cost is what you are, lost wages or medical bills, something you can put a price or cost on. And value, for example, is like if you have a young child and you want to pick up your child, right? That's like priceless but that has all the value in the world. But if you can't do that, if you lose your health, your mobility, your freedom, and then basically ask them if they'd be willing to put a price on things that we all value. So that was basically what I was going to do in jury selection, and ultimately value the loss and put a value on all the harms and losses. And I was going to tell them that it's not only money for medical bills and lost wages, but it's also money for pain and suffering and money for a quality of life, right? How the quality of life was changed. And then if the verdict is high, like, you know, many, many millions of dollars, 10 million, 15 million, do you have any problem with that? Some people would say, well, you know what, I'm fine with it, but I'm not gonna give more than X, right? They have a cap, they have a ceiling. I'm not gonna give more than 1 million, right? Everyone has a different perception of money. So I was going to get into that and really let them, even though now I'm talking a lot because I'm going through all the topics, but in jury selection, I would be talking less and I would be letting the jurors kind of like, it's almost like, some people call it a funnel, because essentially what you're doing is you know what you want to get them to say, but you're basically just saying things like, well, how about that? Tell me more. But you're trying to lead them in and get them to say these things.
In jury selection, what I always try to do with the jury is make sure they know basically, money is not the main concern. Enjoyment of life, bringing justice to my client because their life was taken away from them. They're looking at a life of pain in the future, not using their bodies and enjoying life the way they wanted to enjoy was suddenly taken away. I always tell them about that concept of what is fair and just, and I'm going to leave it to the jury to come up with the fair value that they believe my client should get for the past pain and suffering up to today's date and going on for the rest of my client's life after we all go home after the trial. I'm a big believer that the jury is going to do the right thing. Once they hear the judge give them the formula, then I'm comfortable after they get the legal formula to ask them for fair and reasonable compensation by suggesting numbers.
Okay, so that was basically like an overview of the jury selection in this case. So next, we're going to do another video where we talk about the opening statement. So please like and subscribe to our channel. Let us know what questions you have. Our goal is helping serious injury victims and families. We are here for you. If you need a consultation, just text me. It's 347-566-9595. And all the best. Talk to you soon.
Have a nice one.